Scores. You have a question for Andre here?
Hey, what's up? Yeah, I've been enjoying the conversation so far, guys. And Andre, it makes me hopeful whenever I see like a young person who seems to like have some values. A good conservative kid. That's like
Thank you.
his. Yeah, it gives people hope for the future. So love to see that. But you mentioned that you aren't a fan of Nick Fuentes, right?
No, not a big fan of Nick. No, not at all.
And were you ever at one point?
When it came early on, I did watch America First very early on, like when he started when he was like 19, 20. It was entertaining. It was fun. Like, oh, cool. Someone's on YouTube saying, the same things I'm saying, here out on the street. Cool. Watched him a little bit, but then it just became more and more involved in e-drama and all that other garbage. And nothing of actions come from that. You could say, well, he went and had to stop the steal with Ali Alexander and the whole Indian pedophile. But still, nothing came from that. Sitting here red pilling people on the USS Liberty and talking about Matt Walsh all day doesn't get you anywhere further. You have to be committed to. You have to be committed to action. You have to be committed to going and talking to the working class. He said before he doesn't really care about the working class. He said a lot of degenerate things. I can't sit there and support someone, even as a Catholic. He's Catholic. I hate to put down another Christian, but if you're doing bad for us, if you are a representative that has so much power, so much influence, you have the spotlight, you have the podium, and you bring so much negative attention, the media is already going to put you negative because of your beliefs and because of where you're coming from. But when you do it even more by your actions and what you're saying and putting down people that will be your allies, that's when I have a problem with you. And that's my gripe with Nick Fuentes. There's nothing coming from Nick Fuentes on the ground. When they start running for office, when they start going out and passing out food on the street, we start seeing the groypers go to these community centers instead of trying to debate, Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh on Israel, then we can start going forward, and I'll give them, credit where credit's due. But honestly, it's not probably not going to happen.
So your condition before you will give Nick a chance again is that he must stop calling out Israel?
Here's my thing. Where does it take us? Sitting back and naming names. We all know who does what. We all know exactly who's doing what within the country. We know the relationship that we have with Israel. We know the crimes of Israel. I get it. But what everyday average working people, what they need to hear is solutions. Solutions to what's going to happen with the economy. How are they going to feed their kids? Are their kids going to get good education? Are they going to continue to watch jobs get shipped overseas to Mexico and China and things be made in India and China and not here in the United States? That's what they care about more than naming names and saying that. That's important. Don't get me wrong. And don't call me a traitor for saying that we shouldn't do that. You should do that. You should be putting these seeds in the minds of everyday working people. But that being your main attack point and being your main focus is not the way forward. We've done that for years. We've done that for decades. No matter whom it is, you could talk about Pierce, you could talk about Ernest Zindel, you could talk about all these other people. You could talk about, you can read all the books if you want to read. You could talk about all these different influences we've had throughout a century of struggle, a century of moving forward against the two-party dichotomy, against capitalism and communism. We've had this conversation over and over again. Now is the time. We are in the century of action. This is a century of change. We must make it that way.
Are you saying, Andre, that naming them isn't a skill set I can teach my kid? That's gonna feed them.
It's something you can do. I'm not saying. I know some people that they tell their kids like they do this, they do that, parentheses, and do this and that, right. And it's cool. I would say that I've done it to a degree, but when we want to see change in this country, when you have that kind of platform, when you stand at the podium, when you're giving this message, when you're speaking, you have all these connections. We should be providing solutions to the people so that we can get these people on our side, so we can get into the election and start enacting policies, getting rid of dual citizenship, right? Stop sending $36 billion to Israel and Ukraine and all these other nations. Get rid of the Fed. We can't do that if we're just talking, well, I'm just going to red pill people on, what happened on, June 8th, 1967, like this.
Ask them what happened to USS. Like the name them thing, I went through a tiny phase of that, and it was so fruitless. Like, I equate it to Gnosticism, where you just chase knowledge for knowledge's sake, and then you acquire what I call folders, and then you're like, look at this folder of the bergs I have, and you go, yeah, but now what? Did you know how to, do you learn how to weld? Did you build anything? They're like, no, but I have the list of the bergs, and you're like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, you can't scapegoat. That's the irony, isn't it? That the scapegoating of the Jays, you become very Jay-like in your scapegoating, and then
you do.
You just
that's something I've seen throughout all. I've spent a lot of time in WICNET circles. I'm gonna be real. All right, TRS, fucking all types of shit. Right. I spent a lot of time. I hate fucking Discord for this reason. That's why I'll never touch it again. But that is what it's always boiled down to. It's always boiled down to the J. And it's like, okay, bro, you're talking about demographics and, all this is changing and you're blaming. But what are you trying to solve? What are you trying to accomplish? Let's focus on that more than just, we're just going to go out and we're going to name and wave a flag. And like, where the fuck are you going to go from that? Like, what happens more?
Andre, I had this comic that I drew because I'm primarily a political comic artist. And it was like this guy who's like, pointing to an Israel flag, and he's like, it's their fault. And then he's like, the next thing he's blaming something else. And then he's finished in front of his computer, so to speak. I won't get graphic. And then he blames them again. Like, he blames them for him whacking off all night. Like, the blame game is endless. You could never run out of people to blame. Yeah. And then when I don't know if you witnessed this, but I did this. I had my little phase of that, and then I was like, this is weak. I don't feel like a man just constantly pointing the finger and blaming these like these happy merchants, and I'm gonna name them all and do all this stuff. Right. And I got such a bad backlash because of it. I would get like all these people then being like, you were bought then, like suddenly like you become a co-opt because you figured out that that's no longer a worthwhile, fruitful pursuit. Like it's useless. It's like it has some use as far as like pointing out to certain behaviors and who's in power. Of course, this is important. How much influence certain groups have on Congress, let's say. Very important. But just the pointing, all you're really saying is, I want to be there where they are. Exactly. And if that's the case, well, then you better start making more babies and getting those positions. What you ask them, I ask very basic questions. I asked Adam Green this. Do you want to take over the banking industry? Do you want to be in control of all of the banking, fractional reserve banking? Well, you said, no, I don't. I just don't want it to exist. And I say, well, okay. So if you point to the people who do the stuff and it doesn't stop the thing from happening, what is now your option? Right? Is it to get off the completely this sort of beast system, the usury-based system? Okay, if that's the case, you're going to have to be very upfront with what that's going to require of you. It's not just some easy task where you go, I deny my social security number. I'm no longer on the no, that's not going to do it. That's not it. So there's a lot more there, and I'm on board with you that the pointing the finger is actually fun when you're doing mockery. Yeah. But you can only do like, what percent of mockery until you have to be doing things in your life as well. And that's where I think that the wholeness of a view comes into play. You still have to practice your theology. You have to teach it. There's a lot more going on than politics. But anyway, are there questions, Hoax Wars?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
Well, if the Muslims were pushing this people towards this Jew thing, right? Getting people to hate Jews. How would we know the difference? As is like part of their doctrine, right? Civilizational jihad. And so a lot of what gets people riled up about the Jews is just really propaganda from Muslims. How would we know the difference? Or
between
China,
the Muslim name-ums and the ordinary American name-ums that you're talking about?
I'm saying there's a lot of pressure on you to talk about the Jays. I mean, you were just talking about it, right? Like, you're talking about all these people that name the Jays and are obsessed with naming the Jays. How do they get to that point? There are a lot of people like this. And I'm saying, how do we know that this isn't a Muslim propaganda op to get people to hate Jews? Because aren't you saying that you feel like Jews are demonized more than they should be?
Oh no, I don't think that.
No, I don't think that either.
No. It's the what the distinction is the excuse. That it's not masculine to use it as an excuse. There's only so much you can use as an excuse to not fulfill on your duties as a man creating the image of God, as someone who's generating ongoingly value for his fellow man and community. These things can't be used as an excuse at all, and they are. That's the position. I think the Muslim who points out that the Muslim actually, I don't know if they're using it as an excuse, and so I don't know if it stops them from expanding terrestrial. It doesn't look like it's stopping the Muslims. Maybe they're more committed to a very clear outcome. I disagree with their entire theology.
Yeah.
But if you're asking, are they effective? I guess it depends where you look. In some of the actual places that are Muslim majority, they're actually losing that war as well probably because of modernity. Honestly, the infiltration of McDonald's, so to speak, as the consumerism and modernity and equality and women's liberation become the hot commodity for the new world religion. Mm-hmm. So I think we're all at the effect of that. But no, I think, Hoax, you definitely misunderstood both of us today. That we would not say naming people or looking at group identities that share a certain behavior in certain categories and industries to suddenly just be like, no, that's wrongly demonizing. But we're just talking about being honest. If you want those positions, you actually can't demonize them. If you want to do what they're doing, you can't demonize them. You have to say, oh, they're more homogenous and they kind of stay in group and they have this little code where they're like, are you a Jew? I gotta work with you. and we don't have that in America. It's like, what am I gonna say to Andre? You'll be like, we don't. I'm be like, oh, I'm from originally my grandparents are like from. One of them is from Sicily, which is almost by Tunisia. Like, or you're kind of black.
Hey,
like,
black brother.
Let's do business. They kind of, even though they're the minority, what is it, like 2% of America, yet they hold these crazy positions of power. Mm-hmm. It's the commitment to that homogeny. If you're really looking at the behavior now, if you want the homogeny, you can't go and say you're homogenizing too much. You're too in group preference because that's the thing you want. Exactly, if that's the thing you want. If you don't want that, I don't know what you're after because you're going to want some sort of cohesive shared value and practice in your life, and that's why theology is important, not because it's pragmatic, but it actually is pragmatic as a not always. Sometimes you could be in a country that you'll just get killed for practicing. So it's not always pragmatic to be a practicing Christian in this case. But no, it's not wrong to demonize. It's just wrong to use it as an excuse.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Hoax, I don't know if are you a big fan of Nick Fuentes? Are you a gripper coming at me? Have you seen me on the kill stream? It's like, I know that black guy, that black voice. I was on there a few weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you're done for now. Wait till the other Quakers get a hold of this.
No, I don't.
The Quakers they're still coming after me. Wow, I can't get a break, but they're very mad because
you're not a Groiper, right? Hoax Wars. We've interacted before. You're just a Jew defender.
Oh.
I don't know what's worse. All right.
Well, the way I got to that process is that. The thought process I took is that you guys are saying people that obsess over the Jews, they're not justified in dedicating their life to it. But I'm thinking, okay, either they're right or they're wrong. And if what they say, then if what they say is right, then they are right to obsess about it because the country is in imminent danger. And so but if they're wrong, that means that they are overstating things, and there's a reason they've been led to believe that. So is it?
Here's what I'll say.
People have been fed propaganda about Jews. No.
I would say,
I mean, on both sides.
Both sides. We can
Jews
go back.
Jews have been fed propaganda about Jews as well. So
exactly. Mm-hmm. Now, is there some validity to the claims that have been made? Yes. When you look at throughout history, the positions of power that the Jays have held throughout history, that's something we have to take into account. Is it all no, it's not all. Like every Jay is a problem, but every time they get into these positions of power and finance, and they get into these government positions or whatever, when they're in control of the treasury, certain things happen. Or they get a big multinational corporation, they can't be touched. Certain things happen, and we have to question that. Because if it was black people doing it, we'd be like, let's take it as this. We have black people that commit a certain amount of crimes, and we call out those blacks. Is it every black that does it? No, it isn't. But we call out those people when they start doing that. We have a name for them. We have words for them. We call them. We name them. Right? So we have to do the same thing. I mean, we can do it with blacks. We can do it with whites. But for some reason, there's laws against me doing it for an entire group of people. I will go to jail in France if I just said, I'm going to name names, and I'm going to write music that names names, like somebody that did from Austria. And then guess what happens? You're in jail for 40 years now because you decided to say something. It's an issue. You have to really question. You cannot. What's the saying? Those you cannot criticize are the ones that control you. And it's quite obvious when you see a people that control 2%. There are 2% of the population within a nation, and they're overrepresented within academia and within finance. And the moment you say something about them, you're banned from payment processors. You can't talk on YouTube. You don't have a job anymore. They want to kill you. Come on now. Say if you do that with whites, it's all fair game if you do it with the white people. It's okay if you do it with the black people to a degree. But when it comes to this group of people, it's a problem. You really have to ask the question.
And it also is, there's a limit to it as well, because Hasidics, right? They're not. They are sometimes completely anti this automatic Israel nation state partnership with America. Some of them are outspoken. Yeah. So there, a lot of them also just infight. So in general, we're talking about. When is it okay to generalize? The other problem is someone with a Stein name might not be a practicing Jew.
Exactly.
An actual. But if the theological aspect of Judaism permits or allows for certain behaviors in politics or in economics, like usury or something like that, or heal the world, right, as a theology, and they have influence over policy and money and all of this stuff, the question ends up being, which is always a good debate, is there even such a thing as the separation of church and state if in all of it can be influenced by worldviews? Now, I think it's more valid to generalize Jews from a worldview perspective, and if that applies to politics and economics, then it's fair. But if it's just the name Stein, it's. I would agree. It's going to be limiting because it's kind of like a protective shield. Ultimately, that's my biggest criticism of Jew in name, is that you can actually, just like a black person today could be like, you're just saying that because I'm black, or a trans person's like, you're just saying that you hate us. If you have a name and you get to say I'm Jewish, even if you're not practicing, it's this clutter of like cultural versus actual committed theological Jews that are kind of blurred. And I think for some people they're purposely blurred because it's a protective racket shield. And and there are people who admit this, right? There are outspoken Jews who are like, no, we do this. We use the Holocaust and all of history as we know it. We use that as a way to deflect from any criticism. It's a known tactic. This person was I think she was like either the prime minister of Israel at some point or someone before. There's a clip of it where she's like, no, this is what we do. Like, it's a tactic. And so is it wrong to call out that tactic? No, of course not. You'd say, oh, you're using that protective shield thing. And I don't have it. I'm like a mutt. Right, like Italian, Irish. Maybe my great grandfather was a German Jew somewhere. I don't get to be like, oh, you're trying to deny my existence. I obviously don't have enough of it. Otherwise, my YouTube would be at like 100,000.
Right, you probably have $1 million in bank.
So I don't know what you think about that, Hoax Wars. It sounds like. Your critique might be valid, but it kind of oversimplifies all of the different variables when people generally talk about like what we can and can't criticize and who and for what reasons. There's a lot of different positions, and I might disagree with on some methodology of criticism, for any group of people, and then I might agree with certain forms of criticism for groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah, you guys did a good job answering. I appreciate it.
No problem.
No problem.